Station.
Don't touch the computer.
Don't touch the computer, okay? So there's rules up here too. Yeah, don't touch the computer, probably turn your phone off and your ringer off.
Don't knock anything over.
Not you, I'm talking about me, turn my ringer off. Yeah, don't knock anything over. So all I have is a copy of the same stuff that you guys have out there with some notes for myself. My name's Sean Northrup, and I'm the managing member of the LLC that owns the project. We have investors in the project, families actually, interestingly, as a side note, just families, not any institutional additional outside capital, but we do have families that invest in the project. And then Jennifer, the gal in the black tank top, is that what you call that top? I'm not sure, I don't know what they're called. Anyway, that's my boss 24 hours a day, so she's super integral to our business. Shandy's here and checking things out, and she's in sales and marketing for business. And thank you all for coming tonight to just have a conversation. So, where's Amy? Amy, hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much too, and thank you to David. So I had an opportunity to meet with Amy and David a couple months ago, a month and a half ago, just about what we're up to. And I think Amy came out of that and said, "Oh, this is some interesting stuff that maybe we should kind of present for additional folks that might want to learn about the project and what's happening in town and all that." So if I set that up okay, Amy?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. So I'll just dive in. We'll have a chance afterwards to have some Q&A, and then I think, Jennifer, if you can check, I think we handed out the sign-in sheet and some cards, so if anybody had questions on the cards, or if we have additional questions, we can just hit those. So we'll get through this informal presentation pretty quickly. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the project Adara, and specifically job creation, economic development, tax revenue, some forecasts of what might happen with the downtown region, a little bit about what we believe is happening with future homeowners and the family demographics of people who are coming to town, and then a little bit on, we have some ongoing litigation with the city, so we'll hit that just a little bit, kind of give an update on that. So with that, starting, Adara started about 25 years ago actually, and then we purchased the land about 25 years ago. And hi Heidi, hello, welcome. Super informal, come in anytime. Don't hesitate to grab a drink or some food too. So we purchased the property back then, and then in about it was about 2001, and actually in 2002 or 2003, the city approached us and said, okay, we can kind of see this impending development starting to happen with other lands that we bought and other people that had started purchasing land in the area, and said, could we participate in the development of this, and what could we do to get involved and have a more cohesive plan with the land that was right adjacent to the existing city limits. So fast forwarding quite a bit, but from 2002 to 2011, we worked with the city we worked with their planning commission, we worked with the county, the city council members, and several different coalitions that were put together to arrive at a thing that the city said that they wanted to support in terms of what their vision was for the future and what we would be willing to do as landowners. So essentially, a development agreement is put together where the municipality and the developer have some more certainty to what will happen over the next throughout the entire build out. So if that doesn't happen, what would happen with a project like that is you have somebody buy 5 acres and develop it a certain way, and then buy 2 more acres over here, and it gets really difficult for the municipality to plan out things like roads and layouts and stuff like that. So in 2011, that was approved, and then as many of you may recall, the economic recovery in Cle Elum wasn't in 2011, it wasn't in 2012, wasn't in 2013, and so on. So it wasn't until 2019 that we started to put together the plans to actually start the development. So with that said, we had envisioned Adara as, with the city, as part of the city and integral to what was happening with the city. Whereas a lot of development that happens these days across the country is in a suburban area because that's all that's left to develop. So you have a downtown core, you got services and things, everything's built out, and then you have these developments that are done outside of those cores. And so with that, you get others, different type of development. Whereas the opportunity with this project was to be able to develop something that was within the, within walking and biking distance of downtown, and really that was the kind of the driving factor to what it would become. So creating a place where outdoor enthusiasts and homeowners can be close to nature, with small town values, and then also connected to vibrant downtown. So that was the exciting kind of work or the thought process that went into it. When Adara is fully developed out, it's 354 acres, has approval for 962 homes, and it will have 3 public parks. We've planned an outfitter building. So what is an outfitter building? It's kind of a welcome center, a place that you can come in and learn about the community. And our intentions are to have the site that was selected is near the Coal Tracks Mountain Bike Park that we started building about 6 or 7 years ago. And that site is for walking, hiking, biking. We'll likely have a bike shop, a light food and beverage place, and then a small co-working kind of space, sort of a mixed use type of small building. It's got the Coal Tracks Mountain Bike Park. And in regards to our discussions tonight about commerce and business, we'll have a modest amount of what's referred to as neighborhood commercial. So the idea with that is that we want to support downtown, but through the environmental impact analysis, a bunch of things came out from the agencies that review that and said, well, what are you going to do about people that want to go in their neighborhood to some small commercial area? So there's a very limited amount of commercial that is as of yet to be determined. So it might be of interest to talk about later tonight in terms of if anybody has any ideas or thoughts about what they'd like to see. We can't really predict that. I'm sure everybody would raise their hand and say, yeah, grocery store, that's the lightning rod in town, right? And so we'd love to see a grocery store too, and I'd be happy later to talk about some of the conversations we've had with potential grocery stores. So anyway, that remains to be seen what that neighborhood commercial could be, but perhaps it ends up being a daycare because that's what the need is in the town, or it's an ice cream shop or a grocery. So as Adara evolves, I'll get into the kind of forecasted development in a few minutes. We don't really know how long it will take, but we have the development agreement that was negotiated with the city allows for a phased development that we can kind of expedite and slow down based on economic conditions and market demands. So when it's complete, however, we'll have apartments, attached units, townhomes, duplexes, detached units. There's some envisioned cottage product, which usually just refers to a way to plan smaller homes that can reach a more affordable price point. Interestingly, cottages don't work great up here in a lot of cases because what happens is the planners want to have a cottage and they want to have a detached garage. Well, what happens up here? Well, everybody slips and falls with your groceries coming from your garage to your house. So, but cottages could refer to smaller homes to hit a price point that would make sense. Public, all the roads and trails are public. There's a sequence in which all the open space tracks and the parks will be dedicated to the city. Essentially, we create those spaces and then complete those spaces, and then they get dedicated to the city after that. And all those areas will be public. So there was a lot of thought that was put into this by some really hardworking council members, the planning commission, actually a whole bunch of just interested citizens back in 2009, 10, and 11. Hundreds and hundreds of hours of public meetings and discussions and thought and planning in regard to what it was going to become. So a lot of passion around how we did that. So the vision for it was driven by several award-winning designers and planners, and really, I think I mentioned already, just the unique opportunity to do something like this with the town already here, as opposed to trying to create something. So typical model is you create something distant, you manufacture some reason to be there and go there, and then you build some playgrounds and maybe build a golf course or those type of things, where everybody on the planning team was like, look at how amazing Cle Elum is and the opportunity to help fill up storefronts that are empty or to help utilize all the infrastructure that was already here. So, our end goal with that was just to be able to make a reality of being able to purchase a new home in a really well thought out community as opposed to one where a little bit of development and then a little bit more and it's kind of all the same. 2024, kind of moving into forecast area, so it's a little bit hypothetical all what's going to happen in the future. However, we do have single family homes available for sale right now. So far to date, our affiliated and wholly owned home builder, Trailside Homes, is the only home builder who's purchased lots in the community. I'll get to it a little bit later, but all these lots are available to all builders, and we have many deep conversations happening with billion-dollar home building companies and then other builders that build 5 homes a year. So we're excited to welcome them into the community. First completed model home by Trailside Homes, that was opened in a few months ago. It's at 415 Outfitter Place, so right in this area here. And I'm super excited to announce we have 3 move-in ready homes coming to market. So we have 3 homes, first homes in Adara. It'll be available to purchase and then move in the next couple months. So the opportunity, I guess, for any of you that know builders, I know there's one builder here. I've talked to him already about buying lots. He's got enough lots maybe of his own already. But anyway, so there's a wide variety of opportunities for builders to purchase lots in the project. And essentially we have a design guideline process where we've designed or set prescriptions for what the homes will look like and what they'll be like. And the inspiration for it was all the current architectural vernacular in the city. So what we asked the designers to do is go to Cle Elum, be in Cle Elum, look at what's going on in Cle Elum, and kind of extract all the cool stuff that happened, since the 1880s when this town was founded or started. Let's see, demographics, demand. I think we get a lot of questions about who's coming and what are they going to do and what do they like, and we're not really totally sure. But we have many conversations with families that are thinking about that process, and I'm going to commingle my answer to that question with some of our buyers. We also have a project called Skyline Ridge that's outside of the city. It's just slightly north of the city limits, but we have a few families that have moved in there as well. So some examples of people that, let me step back for a second. Other question that we get is, well, how fast is it going to go? What's going to happen to town, and what does it look like? And of course, we're only as good as we get paid to forecast the future. We don't get paid anything, so we're really not that good at it. But we do have a little inkling to the demand, and I think, David, we were chatting about all the kind of the pent up buyer demand. They're not ready to go. They're waiting for rates. They're waiting for exciting elections, things like that. But there's a constant flow of people coming to look and ask questions. So prior to the rate chaos, the notes I put down, rate chaos and election chaos. So interest rates seem to send everybody into a tailspin. There's some reality in terms of what can you afford or what can't you afford. However, there's also opportunities to purchase things and refinance and whatnot. And then also, I don't know if anybody's heard, but there's an election in November, and that seems to sort of, send everybody into, well, what's going to happen. Prior to that, the market demand analysis that we have had conducted suggests that there's a demand for somewhere between 100 and 180 homes in this project, in addition to whatever Sunkedia is doing and some other projects around the area. Post-COVID, that skyrocketed. So once the reality set in that the new normal at that time was work from home, don't go to the office, literally our inquiries were just kind of shot through the roof. And so now as we've settled into sort of post get back to the office, I think I don't know, some of the big companies that Amazon and others have said, hey, you want to work here, you got to get in to the office a certain number of days. So it's sort of settled into reality. I saw a statistic the other day that the Seattle metro area went from like somewhere in the 20% range for previous work from home, and now it's settled out at like 37%. So significant, but not just, everybody can work anywhere. So that is kind of settled in, and then what we're seeing is people that have a connection to the Puget Sound area for one of three reasons. Almost always, it's kids, grandkids, or their career. Otherwise, they might be able to choose to move to a place further away, but they're excited to stay in Washington and be near something. And we're seeing a definite shift to people that are full-time. Some who this is their primary home and they're keeping another home, but prior to the COVID era, I would say less than 30% were full-time primary homeowners, and I think our prediction at this point is over 60%. So we have a really unique opportunity to attract people that love what we have here already and all the values of why you want to be in Cle Elum, who have the ability to maybe continue making money in whatever way they do and live here. So a couple examples of families that have chosen to live here in our projects. The last three homes I know that we sold, they're all full-time buyers. And I know Jennifer will correct me if I'm wrong because she knows a little bit better than I do. We had one family that moved here from Mercer Island. They sold their much more expensive home there. I think their youngest kid had just left college, and so they're super excited to put roots into Cle Elum. Another family moved here from Gig Harbor. They have kids in school, so their kids will be going to school in the Cle Elum school system. Do we have a family from West Seattle? Yes, and they've got kids too, right? And they're moving here full time.
Possibly.
Yep.
I think that's the goal.
Okay. We have one buyer who had moved, who had chosen to live in town. She was on a larger acreage piece nearby and just wanted to be part of the energy in town and what's going on. Then we had another buyer who, as an example, his primary home is in Lake Taps, and this will be a second home. So that's kind of just a little sprinkle. Would you say it's a good sample, Jennifer? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Jennifer, if you can't tell, Jennifer might know who they are, what their first names are, what their kids like, and all kinds of stuff. So the type of inquiries and requests that we get, because and Shandy gets to experience this all the time. What's town like, and what's it going to be like, and what's changing in town? And so what I hear, and maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, but what are the opportunities to get involved? We have people that are excited to come here and learn about how they can be engaged in the town. Most of them are coming from places where it's really difficult to get deeply engaged because they're big communities and a little bit more anonymous. We hear questions about where can I make investments, and sometimes it's about money, but other times it's about time. So what kind of things can they put their time into? What businesses are coming to town? Often they want to know kind of what's up and coming, or what's happened, or what things are changing. We get some questions about what will downtown be like after the revitalization. They see all the activity and the kind of buzz of infrastructure getting fixed. So what do the next 10 years look like? We're not really sure, but we do know that Adara at build out will probably add about 2,500 people to the town of Cle Elum. And so, as you probably all know pretty well, it's about 2,000 people now, so obviously that will more than double the population. It's probably such a big percentage increase, it's kind of hard to fathom, almost. And it's a big deal, it's super important, and takes a lot of care on everybody's part, including our municipal government and all that. It's not going to happen overnight. It's probably going to take 10 years, might take more, who knows. However, some of the things that are difficult to see right now that I think are important for our business community, and therefore the chamber, are there substantial economic benefits that come with that. There's all kinds of studies, and I'm not the expert to regurgitate the studies, but you can imagine all those people need to buy stuff, they need to participate in things, they're going to be paying taxes, and they're going to be feeding those taxes into the system, including to the city of Cle Elum. So quite a bit of vitality will be breathed into that. So if you're a business owner or somebody that's interested in business here, you might sort of look at that and say, well, what does that mean in terms of foot traffic and driving traffic, and how does that translate to what's going on downtown? Tax revenue to the city. The tax revenue forecasts, which are inside the environmental study work that was done for the project. Some of those go back to 2011, but they're basically transferable to now, so maybe the numbers are a little bit different, but the percentages are the increase in tax revenue. So those forecasts were that the tax revenue will more than triple to the city of Cle Elum, which is really great news because we know we need a lot of things and we all always want our municipalities to do more than they can. And I think something to keep in mind is we have a lot of conversations about concerns and how those things are going to go and how is all this going to be handled. It's challenging to look forward, but when you look forward to triple the tax revenue, IDERA is doing things like paying for its share of the infrastructure impacts. There's all kinds of studies that happen during the build out to determine, for example, what the traffic impact is, and IDERA has to pay its share for those impacts. So it's a really big deal, to our town. We take that very seriously. The development agreement was set up so that over the course of the build out, over $10 million of mitigation fees are paid to the city. So what that means essentially is if somebody files a building permit on an existing city lot nearby, but without the agreement that we have, they pay about $9,000 less in fees than the DARA homes will pay into that system. Let's see, current homes offerings. Right now, homes are for sale for the 600s to the 900s. We've had some feedback and questions from folks in town saying, well, that's not affordable and that's not attainable. And we don't really disagree. It's extremely challenging to build homes and to hit a price point that we'd all like to see with 500s or 400s. And simply put, the simplest way to do that, two ways. One is to build things smaller, and the other one is to work with your municipality to figure out how to expedite things, reduce friction, reduce unnecessary mitigation that needs to be done in the project, to try and partner and collaborate on reducing the cost of delivering those units. We will be bringing out, not in this phase right now, but later we'll be bringing out townhomes and other attached product, and we're constantly inquiring of the market to find out, well, what would somebody want? Would they prefer something at a lower price that's smaller, or would they prefer to wait it out and purchase something larger? So that price range will grow both at the higher end and the lower end as the project evolves. Kind of final topic, I think, before we have a chance to just chat and talk. We get a lot of inquiries about the litigation that we had with the city of Cle Elum, and from 2020 to about 2023, there was an unfortunate disagreement about how the development agreement should be administrated, and so ultimately that had to go to court. It's now been to court 4 times, and all 4 of those times, the judge issued an order that was supportive of the interpretation that the city had violated, or rather breached, the development agreement. And so what that resulted in is a severe financial impact to the project. And so the remaining litigation has to do with the settlement of what those damages are that will be paid by the city to the project for those delays. We'd really like to see something settled in the middle, essentially. I mean, all negotiations end somewhere with, the common refrain is, nobody's happy with the outcome. It's not here where this party wants, not here where this party wants. And our goal has constantly been, because we're partners for a really long time, to come up with a resolve that would say it's respectful of that middle, I guess, so to speak. It's been really challenging to do so. I don't envy the council members or the mayor that are responsible for making those decisions. They're all basically, pretty much volunteer jobs, and they're part-time and they've got other careers. So invested a great deal in their legal team to try and hold their position that they don't owe anything for the financial damages. So from my perspective, what could you do, or what could we do? Well, we need to look at it as a business community and say, well, what is the risk? What's happening with our municipality, and what can be done? We can certainly stand up and participate in any type of negotiation and discussion, which we've been trying to encourage. And simply put, we'd like the city to do the same and come to a resolve. We do have a final a court process that's September 30th, and that arbitration will determine the amount that the judge will determine the amount that she believes is owed for those damages. So our objective all along has been to settle that prior to that, because we really don't want a town that has a financial judgment against them, certainly not one that is going to be challenging to be paid. So you're welcome to talk to me after this about individual things that we can do. My thoughts about it are to contact your council members or your mayor and express your opinions about what you think about it. We'd be glad to give you any more information or ask them about it. But it's a partnership for a really long time, and we sort of need to put the past behind and move the project forward. There's a lot of ongoing expense. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are being spent every month right now by the city on essentially getting prepared for this arbitration and making a decision to say, let's go the distance. So anyway, lots of positive things happening, and certainly don't want that message and information to be construed in a manner that I don't think that the current administration is being effective or successful. I personally am super happy to see engaged council members and engaged mayor and people looking to solve lots and lots of problems. I think they've made an immense amount of success or progress in their first 6 months or so in office, and we hope to continue to support that. Also, in regard to the city staff, we have been blessed with dedicated, super hardworking folks in the building department and public works, and so we thank all them for all the work that they're doing. And there's a little note at the end of your package about Trailside Group and all the stuff we do, if you want to check it out. So, does anybody think I missed anything we need to talk about before we just kind of have Q&A? Yes, sir.
Just a question, are you tied into the city utilities? For
Yeah,
service
thank you.
or-
Yeah, great question. So inside the city limit, all projects need to be served by city sewer and water. There's a few little exceptions, and I think maybe all of you have a neighbor that's still on an antiquated system or pipe or septic system here and there. But pretty much, yeah, you have to connect to the city utility.
Do you live in Cle Elum?
No, I live up on Rochelle Road in county.
Oh, so you live in Kittitas County?
Do you live in Cle Elum?
Yeah, I was raised here. I live in Ellensburg.
The park that is on that picture, when is that gonna be dedicated to the city?
Great question. So, back in 2022, so the development agreement states that we're required to create some parks, and then we're required to dedicate them to the city. It also states the city is required to take the dedication. And in the midst of that conflict that we were having, the city basically said they didn't want to take the parks because they didn't have any money to maintain them. So let's kind of leave that as it is. That was with the previous administration, and I think they're going a little different direction. But we're open to the flexibility of when that dedication comes, and we want the city to be able to take care of those things and do the things they need to do. In this particular, since this area right here is actually all, this looks all pretty here, that's the outfitter building. And so this area around it will be dedicated to the public, but we're not dedicating this building and expecting the city to take on the maintenance of that and all that. It's gonna be a privately owned building. But this is really kind of the start of the crown jewel, if you will, of the park. So you can walk across here, we're putting a bridge across the street here so you can get from this area here and up into the hiking and biking trails. So, and also up here, this is, when we say park, most of it is, well, how do we create trails and access and things, so people can get out in the woods? There will be some manicured and planned parks, but predominantly it's get out in the nature.
But I believe he asked, how far off is that?
Oh, yeah, that was long meandering answer without
can't
answering the
say.
question.
Well,
Well,
You don't know.
what? You,
Welcome to my world.
you can
That's
check
all
with,
right.
you can check with the gal in the back. It was not intentional, but that's a criticism I get often, like I went this way and it didn't answer the question I asked.
Oh, I thought you did.
Okay, well,
I didn't get a timeline, weeks, months, years, or decades.
yeah, I think your comment was fair, so I tried to cover it. There's no specific timeline where it has to happen. The idea is that, there is some language in the development agreement that the, whatever the thing's gonna be has to be completed. So we can't dedicate to the city and expect them to take dedication, say this is halfway done and take it. With that said, some of these tracks have already been dedicated to the public because this area here that's shown is phase 1, which has final plat approval. And then up here off the map, when phase 2 is when the final plat is completed for phase 2, other parcels will also be dedicated. So I can't remember the exact language, but there's something in the phase 1 and phase 2 approvals about kind of the sequence of when. There's some stuff in there about, hey, we want to make sure we have parking and some other things before it's dedicated. We can get you those details. Right.
This is kind of just open Q&A.
I think so. I mean, I feel like kind of sitting down here pretty soon.
Yeah. Nope.
I
Nope.
think just to be fair though, because you know Sean, if you could just at least tell him your name and where you're from.
Sure.
So that he can understand a little bit maybe your perception
Yeah.
of the question.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. And getting feedback from you all too, as opposed to just questions, would be great. If if you have a question but you have a statement that you want to make about, hey, you should do this, or what about that?
Yeah,
We're seeking this from the business community, and through sort of the fractured relationship that we had with most of the previous administration, a lot of that stuff was shut down. So, sorry, I'll get to your question in 1 second, but as an example, there's nothing in the development agreement that says exactly how these parks have to fall out. There's a great deal of latitude on our part about what it can become. But when we first brought the development agreement in to say, okay, we're gonna activate it, we asked the city and said, would you like to put a committee together about what these parks are gonna become? And the answer that we got at that time, which is passed, is nope, just send us your notes. And so we couldn't even get this thing generated. We're like, well, do you guys want blue picnic benches or park benches or red ones? We really want to. This is something for everybody. Certainly, they're still going to buy houses. And they're moving to town. But when those trails are dedicated in those open space, that's for everybody. So, yes, your question.
Carl, Roslyn, by way of Bellevue. So I'm here. We came here in 2019. I was also on the board of the Central Washington HBA, BIAW, NAHB, all that kind of stuff. Done about 10,000 homes in Oregon and Washington. So I understand your side. Now, as a resident here, this is not a question. It's more just a statement. I'm sure you've heard it before, but just to reemphasize, the price point is a big deal. I think that it's really sad, in my opinion, that we can't, as a community and as a group of business people and whatnot, find a way to bring a sub $500,000 product to this region. Forterra was one that, yeah, right. There's been some attempts.
Yeah.
The need only increases. And that's from a standpoint of what does the city need?
Yeah.
What do the business owners need? Business owners, so many of them, their staff has to commute from Ellensburg. Yeah. I had a guy that commuted every day from Yagaba. It's a challenge, and I don't know if this is the product or the place to do it, but I'd love to see some kind of commitment or vision from folks like yourself. Say, hey, we could do that someplace else, or we could maybe. That needs to happen. This town doesn't have the ability to provide the labor that your community or any other type of community like it is going to necessitate. And that's my concern as a resident. And I think it's a concern of business owners, everyone I talk to.
Sorry, would you expand on one part? You said it in there, it doesn't have the ability to provide the labor that the project will need. What did you mean by that?
People that are in this, especially in the service-related industry, don't have the income to be able to afford housing.
Oh, right, okay, yes.
And
I
you know,
totally
the
agree.
Forterra project was an interesting one. It was a co-op. I don't know how much you probably know all about it.
I know,
But
enough to be dangerous, but not.
yeah, I mean, there was some interesting upside to that, and it's just unfortunate. And I think that's coming back to life a little bit. But my only comment is you've got a 960 lot injection in this community that's only further going to create a problem we currently have, and it's not your fault. It's just a reality of the demographic in this area is that. Where do these people come from? We have a really hard time getting labor.
So you're
in
just
here.
talking about in general about figuring out how to reduce the average cost of housing. One of our extended team members talks about people getting on the property ownership ladder. I kind of like that. I don't know where it came from, but it's, hey, how do you get somebody so they can start being an owner instead of a renter, right? It's a really big deal because then you're engaged in the community and whatnot. So, in retrospect, if we had been able to have a crystal ball about when we were going to come out with homes and which type of lots that we were going to create, I would have done phase one totally different. But it doesn't work out that way. I mean, that phase one was a fight with the city over an agreement that they agreed to in 2011 that they breached, and the judge said 4 times, yeah, you breached it. So it's supposed to be, and now I think should be settled out, that it's a very quick process to approve subsequent phases within the agreement, within the project, provided that it meets with all the stuff that was settled and said. So we have a lot of latitude to do large lots, small units, homes without garages. There's all kinds of things we can do. So then you get to the reality of like what people will do or what they want. And what we're faced with is we need cooperation from the city to eliminate obstacles that are not productive. Like they're not things that, like we're saying, cut this out, that would be good, but instead we'll look at these things that have been injected into your that don't benefit anybody. Those all add cost to houses.
Trust me, I just remodeled a 1888 house in Roslyn. I wanted to shoot myself.
Yes, so you know exactly the pain we have, and like I said, I think the city and the people that are here working at the city want that to become better, but it gets super hard when you hit, okay, now here's a new energy code that's been debated forever. It's 2018 energy code we're adopting now because of litigation between 18 and 2024. Well, we had to increase home prices $18,000 because the stuff that you got to put in it. And in general, in the building industry, what you would hear from people is our homes now are so tight, so energy efficient, so amazing compared to ones even 10 or 15 years ago. But they keep layering on more requirements, and I'm not going to say whether they're good or bad, but they cost more money. And so what my thought about that is 2 things. One, we're hopefully working with the city to settle out this conflict, and one of the ways that we can do that and find a way to settle things in a manner that doesn't cost the city money, but instead benefits the project financially in a way that will specifically reduce the cost of housing. Here's an example. There's a 3-story height limit in the project right now. So one of the things that we floated with the previous administration is, well, if you want to increase that height limit to 5 stories, where you can't see it from downtown, so you're not changing the character of downtown, now we can build apartments or potentially condos that have a price point that can be much more attainable.
Yeah.
So that would be a single-handed way the city could say, yep, let's do that. So we'd like to do that, and I think what we will do on our own, absent any collaboration, is seek to create more creative products, ADUs or DADUs you might have heard of, attached dwelling units and detached dwelling units, detached accessory dwelling units, and finding ways that you can sell those as individual units so that people can then get into a $400,000 unit that they can start building equity in.
Yeah, you would find a huge amount of support from this community to back that, to give you a voice to City Hall. I just I know it. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it would be amazing. It'd be great. We'll just talk about it further. I'd love that.
sure.
I'm Kevin from Cle Elum. I want to just reinforce that we talk about a vibrant economic, environment. We need people that can be members of the community at all levels. The waitress at my restaurant, I can only support so many multi-$100,000 homes,
Right.
which I guess doesn't really cover $1 million.
Yeah.
But that idea of, I make $20 an hour. How do I afford to rent in town or buy? But it needs to be a pyramid.
Yeah, so it may not seem like it, and most of you here don't know me very well. There's a certain number of units that we need to put in that project to make the project work and make it work financially and all that stuff. It actually would be hugely beneficial if we could accelerate all those units. And the way to do it is to reduce the average price for those units. So we're very in sync in that. There's a lot of challenges, and we can't, we can't in this room figure out rates and macroeconomic environment. Why are people only paid $20 an hour? All that stuff. It's a super deep problem in our country. But we can come together as a community and say, like you guys have both said, support that in the municipality, and we would be a willing partner to look at that, which is one of the reasons that we crafted the development agreement the way we did. Because if you craft one, it's a 25-year agreement, and if you get it all prescribed, like all the lots have to be 60 feet wide by 100 feet, and that's going to be the whole thing, well then they're all going to be $900,000. It just is. But we have the ability to do all kinds of creative little things in there, and we would love to do that because this is a problem that is around the country, and it'd be so cool. And I think the administration now that you have now is a thoughtful bunch of people that would really like to be on that cutting edge and say, look what we did to help that problem.
I would even go so far as to say you have a unique opportunity come September 30th to include that as part of your negotiating in arbitration.
Absolutely.
And I think that, the city might be less willing to pay you money, but they might be willing to accept some concessions on your product.
That's an interesting thought.
Well, a couple other things that's happened that probably only one other person in this room may know of is the city just increased their sewer and water connection fees 4 or 7 times full. I mean, so a fee that was maybe $7,500 is maybe $20,000-$30,000 now.
The fee
And then,
increases.
Sean's talking about he has to pay, $9,000 on top of the building permit and all that. And, I mean, here's $50,000 he's spent and he's not even out the door, and not including the land, the development, and there's all this hidden cost that no one sees. Is what I'm getting at is,
The building permits that have gone up.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's all these things that have gone up that the average Joe doesn't know about all that, and that just gets pushed to the consumer.
We don't really know why. Thank you, Jeff. You can't figure out Jeff's a builder and developer too. He's got a pretty cool project coming in Cle Elum. You should ask him about that. We can only speculate why all those rates were increased. But I can tell you, our project represents 95% of the. Well, if you don't include 47 Degrees North or Bullfrog, which looks like it might revert back to for sale housing after all the stuff that's going on. If you don't include that, then this is probably 95%. Well, maybe a little less because it's Jeff's project. Let's say 90%. It's a big percentage of the building permits that are going to come. So in the middle of this conflict, that the city was sort of willfully ignoring the judge's decisions, all of a sudden they pop out with these things. We're going to increase sewer rates, sewer connections, water connections, and building permits. I don't know why. You can speculate on your own, but it's interesting. We have a disagreement with them about what permit fees were vested to, but Jeff's right. Like, we have all this stuff that's pushing, and even if those were all for good reasons and challenges, it adds $50,000 to the cost of the home. Part of the reason why is when you build a home, whether it's framing or a fireplace box or roofing or a building permit fee, you got to go raise the money to pay for it. You got to pay financing money on top of that. then you gotta mark that up for all those carry costs, then you have a selling cost with real estate commissions and whatnot. So when you have $100 item, that translates into $150 or $160 of the end price. So if Jeff's saying 50 grand, that's what is that? What is that? 1.6. So that's $80,000, $90,000. And we're trying to talk about a $400,000 home. And before we even get started, we've got that. So I think those are things that you're right. We could work with the city and say, well, what would you be willing to do for those? We'd be open to any kind of tiered things where maybe the more expensive product pays larger fees, and all kinds of stuff that I think is being tossed around in thoughtful communities. That'd be really cool to I know a lot of people that want to be here. That and Ellensburg's wonderful, but I run into a lot of people that work here and they live in Ellensburg because they can't afford a rental or a house here. Yes, sir. I don't want to answer any questions from the guy in the white.
Eric, I own a business in Ellensburg, but we're looking at Cle Elum. So just two questions. One, is this program under a homeowners association?
Yes, it is, but it's in the public. All the infrastructure is public. So usually in a homeowners association, you're taking care of the road maintenance and things like that. So I don't remember what the forecasted homeowners dues are, but they're to take care of the open spaces that are not dedicated to the city.
That was kind of address my follow-up question: is who's paying for the infrastructure specifically, like the roads and things like that? Is that the city or is that the development?
So the development has to pay for all of the infrastructure. They also have to pay for any infrastructure that needs to be improved from the boundary of the project to the treatment plants, the water treatment plant and the sewer treatment plant. And then if there are improvements that are required in the treatment plants, they have to pay their pro rata share. So for example, they're going through this right now, and a study was produced and provided to the city. Essentially, for example, the water system is pretty sufficient through 2045 and for all this build out, but there is one exception to that, and there's a pressure zone where if you're higher up in elevation, you have to have a water tower that's higher up so it can feed that area with the right pressure, and there'll need to be another tank built higher up. So that would be an example of something that would be required of the project.
These are all being built to demand. How do apartment complexes get funded in the event that the height restriction is lifted?
Oh, that's an awesome question. Yeah. So while we have a passion for helping people get into the property ownership ladder that we were talking about, obviously there's, well, I don't know how obvious it is. It seems to be there's a rental shortage here. It seems to me it's difficult to find things that are pleasant to live in that are at some sort of rate. So each one of those would be borne by the developer. So either Idera and our development group would choose to develop a spot and say we're going to build apartments there, or it would be sold to one of those home builders or apartment builders, so a developer that would then build. They would have to follow the architectural design guidelines in the project. They have to meet all the city codes, and it would be one thing Carl, I think, was alluding to, like the Forterra project, and there are other advocacy groups, seeking to figure out how to reduce the cost of housing, both for rent and for sale. So if they could be brought into that fold to participate in that discussion, maybe there's some ways that we could further raise. Yes, sir.
Hey, Sean. John Curley. We have a business down the street. You mentioned the $400,000 house. Are you ready for the numbers? You make $85,000 a year. You buy a $415,000 house. You have to put down $100,000. This is financing at 7.5%. Your monthly payment on a $400,000 house is $3,000 a month. So even at a $400,000 price point, that person has to make $3,000 a month to be able to have that house.
Yeah.
So it's basically zoning. I was on the city council of Sammamish. We were trying to get that same sort of problem, having people work rather than driving back and forth. So we had to change the whole zoning. We had to get in there, and then we would do 10%. We'd have to have 10% affordable housing that would give a discount to the developer in order to be able to get more people in. Because if you're paying X amount of dollars for the dirt, you have to increase the capacity. You got to add the density in order to offset the cost of everybody paying part of it. But even a $400,000 house, the person has to make a $3,000 a month payment. So even that number for so many people is just way out of whack.
And I would say it's a current issue. It's not a permanent issue. Meaning rates are going to do what they do. If you can build a product, it's always going to be, it's going to fit a niche. But I'm not trying to argue.
No, I get it. I get
But
it.
it's yeah.
It's a problem.
And to your guys' benefit, I mean, cost creep and build cost to build in Washington is statewide a problem. It's not our city. It's not local. I mean, it's a huge battle that your industry is fighting with Capitol Hill all the time.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it, and to impact the things that John was mentioning, we've got to look for other ways. So in a capitalist market, I go to frame a house, I have to pay whatever the framers are going to charge. That's it. I don't get to go, obviously try and negotiate it and try and work deals, but it is what it is. And then when I go to buy lumber, it is what it is. So the only ways that we can really impact it are through municipal action or through speeding homes up so that we can reduce financing costs, essentially, or making things smaller or more efficiently. One thing that's kind of interesting too, I think that's challenging is you get to a certain point, and maybe that's what you're starting to say, John, you get to a certain point and somebody goes, well, I don't want that. They don't want to, we're experiencing that at higher price points where somebody said they could have bought something at X, now they can only afford 0.7 times X in terms of the product or whatever it is because of the interest rates, and they say, well, I just won't buy. So it's a tricky thing. I think getting back to the people that want to be here, that want to work here and live here, I think the primary way to do it is to figure out how to come together as a community with the municipality and say, well, what do we want that we could create would be awesome. Actually, on this project, we don't really have the flexibility to do 962 big lots because there's too much topography and other things. So it's a perfect place, especially walkable to downtown, to say what else could you do that would be really cool. And there's tons of ideas out in the world, and with this small of a town, we can cut through a ton of red tape and actually be a model of what could we work together to do that.
I came in a little late, but so is this development intended for lots to be sold to individual builders, kind of like Suncadia, and then or individual customers who hire their own builders and that type of thing?
Great question. So the area is set up because of its small lot nature and the intertwined thing. These projects work where their lots are sold to builders, and then builders will need to follow the architectural guidelines, but they would propose what they want to do and how they want to do it. And we would love to have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 home builders in there. We have another project nearby, Skyline Ridge, that's more like Suncadia, in that you buy a lot and then you can choose a builder and build your own. This is some good questions. Good stuff.
I was kind of late, but what's the timeline on the Adara East and Timberline side of things?
Yeah, so Timberline is an area of 12 5-acre lots that's already been developed. It's outside the city limits, so the city limits end right here. This is kind of a little misleading. They are contiguous, so I guess the black line makes sense, but that's in the county, that's the city. We don't currently have any plans for east. However, our job is to help accelerate this growth and make these things happen. The longer it takes, the longer it costs to finance and whatnot. So a developer could come in and propose to purchase this, and then there would be sort of a sub-development underneath the development agreement. So at any time that could change, but I think the logical progression is this area that's already been developed, and there's a little bit more to the west here, and then to work its way from there over to the central area, so this middle area probably getting developed next. Hi, Amy.
Hi, I'm gonna open myself up so nobody shoot me. This is the first time you and I have kind of talked before, since our last conversation.
Yes.
So is that east section where a developer could potentially put a grocery store?
Okay, we're really gonna talking about grocery stores?
Well, okay, then,
Of course.
okay, can
Sorry.
something
Rip it
change?
off.
I have something that contributes after
Perfect,
that.
yeah. No, the grocery store is like, it's almost become a meme, right? It's like everybody like it, right? So we've had conversations with several mid-sized grocery stores, and essentially the summary of the conversations that I've been having is they're not gonna come until there's more homes. It's a super simple math exercise. They just count the number of homes. They say, this is how many you need for one grocery store. Lucky for Safeway, we have more than Safeway needs, plus we get all the, traffic through, but we don't have quite enough for two. That's the simple math. If a grocery store were to come and talk to us, we would absolutely make room for that discussion. However, most of our land has a slope to it, so the more logical place a grocery store would go, and Amy knows way more about this than me, is somewhere in proximate to downtown, and somewhere that's really easy to get to from First Street and really easy to get to from one of the freeway off ramps. So, is that
Yeah, but
Drew?
tell me where on your plot they would eventually land. Okay, thank you.
We can talk.
West.
Yeah, we can talk about that later. There's an area here that would be suitable for it in terms of that. And once it gets over there, then I guess the question for me is, I want to sell the land. Great, yes, please. But it might also be more suitable in the big box commercial thing that is part of Bullfrog Flats UGA. But we would certainly look at it. Also, Amy and I had a good conversation, or I guess an email exchange about whatever we can do to support somebody coming in, even if it's not on our land. We want to get there. And I'm sure you've all seen the folks that are working on Henry's Natural Market. So there's a little, there's some organic efforts that are started. I can't imagine that we couldn't find a way to attract a smaller grocery that maybe could expand over
And
time.
there's a couple that are starting to potentially go into lease, but it's so small that it won't divert any of the frustrations. But it's a start, which is nice.
So it's mini market type thing.
Specialized.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Bullfrog Flat, we had a letter of intent, and it expired, and building costs right now, they're not looking to come back until.
Yeah, I learned a lot when we talked. You basically had said that it's impossible for a grocery store at the margin that it can earn in a balanced market to build a new store. They have to go in and say, we'll have to expand another area that we weren't even thinking about, where we can find a building that we can plug and play and go into. And that's I think, our challenge. Back to the building cost thing, and I think if we can lean into the, I don't know, I'm not in that world, what those codes are, or what it would take to be creative.
Yeah, and so I think online there was a question of how does the chamber benefit from this? Your opinions really help us drive some of the conversations. So right now, the Department of Commerce has a B&O tax incentive that's called Access to Capital Incentive. So for people that may be moving here on a part-time basis but have careers that may pay B&O tax, they can claim that B&O tax to that Access to Capital, and they get a dollar for dollar tax incentive. That's pretty big for people that want to make investments. And so we're trying to educate those individuals to make that investment, to which then the municipalities can go after that access to capital, to which then they can work with developers to bring the gap services that we need as a community. And so those are some of the things of why these things we create, is so we can hear and we can listen, and then ideas pop up. It really does come as a collaborative sense. So I know you wanted to add something else to my question.
Your wife did a nice job when I came, as a nice soft startup. She's like, growth happens, and I'm receptive to that, and I don't know if I'm way out of bounds here, but you guys are talking a lot about building costs and the price of houses, and there's a divide between the community and what the community can afford, and you said the attraction is the small town value. Small town values. I find that incongruent with a $600,000 to $900,000 house on the hill. But as I was listening to you go through the flyer, I'm like, oh my God, these people they're all gonna need a veterinarian. I mean, really, like,
Yeah.
and that's when I just
Is that what
really
you do?
like shut down. Like, I can't even see my doctor now. I
Yeah.
can't see my veterinarian. And so I appreciate that you have a fire pit and a tree house and you're concerned about the color of the benches. But have you given much thought to like trying to attract veterinarians? And I just heard you say that, you know, the businesses won't come until the houses are built, but I feel like residents of Kittitas County are really suffering to try to just meet with their service providers.
I couldn't agree with you more. I want to correct one thing before we go into that. So when I said small town values, it was the moral values.
I know,
Yeah.
but you know, and that's, I know, I
Yeah.
get that, but
Yeah.
it's incongruent with the price of the home.
Well, what I would say also is, you know, the target to buy a home, there's so many amazing, beautiful, gorgeous homes in Cle Elum and Roslyn already. Our goal wasn't ever to say, let's have people there buy these homes here. It was more, wow, you're not gonna be able to afford a home in North Bend, or maybe you already decided you don't wanna be in North Bend, but oh my gosh, let's see how excited you could be to purchase something in Cle Elum. So that's kind of like the financial picture, right?
understand.
But yeah, you said the magic word to my wife back there, veterinarian. Like she's like the other day, she's like, look, here's our emergency vet. It's in Ellensburg because we can't get an emergency to Cle Elum. We love the vet here, by the way, but I get it.
We
And-
can't see them, and so
Yeah.
I think that equally with your effort to attract this and that and grocery stores and buyers and all that you're endeavoring to attract, that some intention needs to be put into some service providers, I think.
I think it's a great point.
So I can answer that a little bit because KVH has a really great program that they're trying to attract services, maybe not veterinarians, but human services.
Well, we need
right?
doctors, yeah, we need access to them.
The number one problem is the trailing spouse. The trailing spouse currently cannot see them active in our community. So there are a lot of rural medical practitioners that really want to come here. It's the trailing spouse that hinders their decision to move here.
So then what do we need to do for them?
There are no jobs for those spouses,
Oh,
so there's a need for
They
other
need work,
industries.
okay.
Yeah, and one of the things that slowly corrected that was the remote work. But now that some of those corporations are requiring them to come into the office, it's not as easy for the trailing spouse any longer. And so KVH has a really great program, which we can probably bring that to the community so you can kind of see what they're doing. Because rural doctors, if they practice in the rural communities for 5 years, all of their student loans are paid,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so
Incentive.
it's those benefits that we're trying to attract and get out there. And KVH is doing an amazing job. They're just struggling with the additional activities. There's so much of trails that a trailing spouse can go out and do and outdoor activities. And we really don't have the shopping that some of those trailing spouses would like more often.
Yeah, I was gonna
So-
say that you put so much effort into all of those bike trails. I mean, a lot of effort and thought, but it's like, what about the vets
But
and the
what
doctors?
we are finding is post-career service are coming back. And so now we need to kind of find, so like a good example would be like Dr. Sand, right? Dr. Sand was retired for 10 years.
Yeah.
And got bored. And so now
Retired.
he's coming back, right? So those are the post-career that we're trying to get to come and re-engage into some of the services that we know are a gap right now. So, and a lot of the service area industry is post-career entrepreneurs. They're the ones that have done it, retired, they're bored, they're coming back into the workforce.
Hi, Susan here with First Infant Marketplace. I just wanted to make a couple comments. First of all, for me as a new business owner in town that's right down here in the downtown corridor, and we just had our opening weekend this last weekend, which was great, and the community support was amazing. But when I hear talk about like something going on off of Bullfrog, I think that if we're not, I think we really need to try to drive the business into the downtown corridor here. I think it's been a struggle for a lot of years for the businesses in the downtown corridor to thrive. And what I've been hoping to create with what I'm doing is, with kind of a farmer's market type of an experience, is that we can start to get just that vibrancy and that community togetherness that we're looking for, which I think, as people buy in this area too and come from all the different areas that we're all gonna come from. I was born and raised a Washingtonian and grew up coming over here as a kid, Pine Walk Sun, snowmobiling and at the lake, and a lot of you know that I started Pioneer back in '99, and my gut intuition coming back in after taking a work gap to raise my kids and now starting my next business is the town's getting ready to pop, and I know the cost of everything is, I'm starting my life over right now too, like it's a lot, right? Even for me to have employees, an average employee cost per day for me is $200 a day. So if I've got 3 people working for me that still can't even afford to buy anything here in town, that's $600 a day that I'm, so how do I even cash flow what I'm trying to do, right? Like we're not gonna be able to do this without each other and without figuring it out, and like I tried to tap into the ground vault behind my business to put power in, and that was 15 grand because of the old clay sewer tiles that are in there. No one would even touch it, so now I'm temporarily doing things, and now my business startup is at risk because I'm temporarily doing things, and everyone's like, oh, so, I don't think it's any developer, anyone's like responsibility to try to figure this out for all of us, right? Like it's, I raised my kids in Fall City. I couldn't even get, before we moved to Arizona, we were in Arizona the last few years, but I couldn't even get off the freeway to even get into Fall City because the infrastructure wasn't there to even accommodate all the cars or even trying to get off the freeway in and out of the Fall City community, which is why we had moved to Arizona, because just getting in and out of the town was impossible. Right? But I think as a community, if we don't get ahead of it's coming, it's not like we're just east of Seattle, right? And everyone's coming from Bellevue and Sammamish and all the other places, right? Because we're trying to be somewhere that feels good, right? But if we don't, as a community, figure out how to feel good together and just point fingers at, or make it harder for people when they're trying to start things, then I don't need to be here. I can just sell and go to Guatemala and buy a little place and paint abstract paintings for the next 20 years. And I'm totally fine with that. But I'm trying to create something good here, right? And and these housing products, there's not enough housing for people in general. So, how do we figure out to do it differently? Is everything needed to crash and we're gonna have a restart here, or I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I think that, having these conversations and coming together as a community with the city and the chamber and all of us together as a community and trying to figure it out, is gonna be the only way we're gonna be able to do it. So I really want my property and my hub to be a place where we can do that. And so please don't do anything out Bull Rock, and let's do it here where we can then feed everyone that's trying to create their businesses and create things for all these people to come to, so we can all start, supporting each other. I think is what we need to do.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, it's I don't know how many people have had opportunity to go to other small mountain towns in the Northwest, Oregon and Idaho and Montana. There's a whole number of towns that are a little more advanced than Cle Elum, that you can see ones that have had the good fortune of being able to develop well and with a lot of thought, and then a few other ones that it wasn't so good. And usually the ones that are spread out and they got the fast food on the ends instead of really focusing around the downtown core. A lot of things that you mentioned, what was your name?
Jeannie.
Yeah, a lot of things you mentioned, Jeannie. They kind of tug at my heartstrings. Honestly, they're a little outside my pay grade.
Right.
I got to lean on Amy and what the chamber's doing. But we've reached out to say, can we have discussions? Can we do things? and I'm probably a little myopic. I'm just trying to build homes.
Right.
And
I know that, I
and
can
do-
see that, and it just
Yeah,
makes
but
me
I-
sad.
Yeah, but I need all that stuff,
Because you're gonna
right?
double the size of Cle Elum, it's like, God, you
But the
have.
only way you get all that other stuff is by having people that will pay for it. The only way that you do that, like I learned tonight about trailing spouse. Like, we gotta have other stuff going on so the trailing spouse can
Yeah.
have something to do. And so, you can't just say, get all the business here, okay, then let's build homes. What we
No,
heard-
I understand.
What we heard for a long time, we're not coming to town because there's no housing stock.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now we're trying to do housing stock, but now we need, so it's a little bit of both, I agree. And, the other part of that is, I don't think any of us probably most people here are of a mind that growth is happening in our country, and therefore it's happening in our state, therefore it's happening in our region. And I find it quite interesting that people that I know that are in Seattle, they're moving to Bellevue because they want to get out of Seattle. People are moving to from Bellevue to North Bend. North Bend here, and then I know people here that have left here and left for Montana.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's a little bit of that, and we're trying to fit that spot in, but I do appreciate the comments and thought on how can we reduce the cost, how can we work on that, and I really appreciate what you mentioned, Carl. Let's try and see what we can do together. I don't think the city's doing anything intentionally to make stuff cost more money, and I think if they understood they had the power to do things the other way, we might be able to reduce some of those costs, and maybe some other organizations have other ways to help out with that too.
So Sean, I mean, maybe another form might be to, what do our homes need to include? Or homes in the area need to include or not include to get down to that price point? Because I think what we're finding right now is people want the lower price point, but they also want all these great
Bells and
things in the
whistles,
homes.
yeah.
So you have the cost to build, soft costs, hard costs, and then the demand. And so, as a builder, it's like, how do you decide what to put in your homes to spec, take the risk, versus do a custom? So maybe that would be a good forum for us to do, to find out what we should pull out, or any builder, Jeff, to pull out of the homes so that it makes it more affordable.
That's
One more
a good.
thing.
It's not a really fun time to be a builder, honestly. I mean, it's
Well-
super challenging. We
Well,
have
one more
pressures.
thing at the state level, you were talking, you were BIAW and all that. I mean, the state is with March 15th, the new energy code. Oh, what does that have? $10,000 more to a house? No one sees it, except the builder. or more. I mean, that's another, the state's trying to make the houses more efficient and everything else. And now then it's just driving up, it's another cost, just more money that's
Yeah, and if you
passed on to the consumer
if you
that no one
combine,
sees.
you combine Jeff's comments with Jennifer's, we're faced with, okay, what can we take out of a house, which is all the fun stuff, the reason you're buying a house, whatever the features are that you can touch and feel, and that's really all that's left for us to play with. And what she's mentioning is we're at a point where people are saying, well, I don't wanna buy a house if it doesn't have this and that other, which I find sad and interesting, because I don't know about you, but most people I know, including myself, grew up in like a 1,500 square foot house with, I had 3 brothers in the same bedroom, and everybody except me came out okay. But now everybody wants a lot of stuff, and it's just the nature of the beast. So can I get untethered from up here? We can hang out. And
Can I ask one more
talk.
question
Yes,
though?
sir.
Nationally, we're seeing a lot more builders that have the ability and are choosing, because of the rent versus buy flip situation right now, building a build to rent single detached house. Would you consider that?
Absolutely. Honestly, I had it on my radar to get schooled up a little bit more about that. I just don't know enough about it, but it's bothered me that I think there's a demand here, and
Well, it's everywhere. I mean, it is really impacting the builder, just the product and the. I mean, it's not good. I think long term for people.
to have build for rent. You mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you just move that goalpost even further for
Further
those
Yeah,
You know,
most
but
of
it's a temporary kind of solution that builders have looked at to try and meet that need in a way that benefits both.
Yeah, I think we think very much alike about it. My job is to move through this land project.
I get it.
And if
Yeah.
we had build for rent company that came in and wanted a bunch of lots, we'd probably be in a situation where we need to sell to them.
Yeah.
But I agree with you about the philosophy about it too. We have not had anybody inquire.
Can you explain what build to rent is?
So so typically home builders would buy land and develop it and then build homes specifically because the intention is to sell that home at the end of the construction. Whereas a build to rent would be our purpose is to build these homes and in some financial vehicle keep them all and rent them out. So just think about like an apartment building, but it's in single family detached homes. And it's proliferated across the country. There's many billion-dollar groups that have tens of thousands of homes in their investment pool. So.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. We are going to just stick around, so if you have individual conversations